Okay, here is yet another example of a quadratic equation that we are going to attempt to solve. When we look at it, we see a difference and we see two squares. So we know that this is a difference of squares to solve. So we know the square root of 16 is 4, the square root of x squared is x. So we know we get 4x. Square root of 25 is 5. We put a plus, we put a minus. We now have the factorized form to solve. So we use the statement. We actually write the word either 4x plus 5 equals 0 or 4x minus 5 equals 0. We minus 5 from both sides and we get that 4x is equal to minus 5. We divide both sides by 4, so x is equal to minus 1 and a quarter. This one we would add 5 to both sides, so we get 4x is equal to 5. Divide both sides by 4, so we get that x is equal to 1 and a quarter. And there we have it, the two solutions for our quadratic equation. Okay, here's another example of a quadratic equation. Now, so it is an equation, but is it equal to 0? It is not equal to 0. So before we can solve it, we first have to make the quadratic equation equal to 0. We can only solve a quadratic equation if it is equal to 0. So to make this equal to 0, we minus 12 from both sides. So we will get x squared minus x minus 12 equals 0. And this we can now solve. So we see that a is 1, b is minus 1, and c is minus 12. Since a is 1, we can use the shortcut method. So factors of ac that add to b. So a by c in this case is minus 12 and b is minus 1. So we could use minus 4 by positive 3. So if we use the shortcut method, we get x minus 4, x plus 3 is equal to 0. We now have the quadratic in the factorized form equal to 0. So we will use the statement either either x minus 4 equals 0 or x plus 3 is equal to 0. We add 4 to both sides, so we'll get that x is equal to positive 4. We minus 3 from both sides, so we'll get that x is equal to minus 3. So there we have our two solutions, x equal 4 and x equal minus 3. Here we have another example of a quadratic equation, and once again we check. To solve a quadratic equation, it must be equal to 0. Is this quadratic equation equal to 0? It is not equal to 0. So the first thing we have to do is make it equal to 0. So we will get 5x squared minus 12x minus 9 equals 0. Now we can solve it as it is equal to 0. So a is 5, b is minus 12, and c is minus 9. So let's see. We have the factors of ac that add to b. So a by c, 5 by 9, that's minus 45, and b is minus 12. So what are the factors? Let's see. We could try minus 15 by 3. Yes, that would work. So we will get, we factor by grouping, 5x squared minus 15x plus 3x minus 9 equals 0. We see what are the factors. So we have 5x, and we're left with, and here we have the HCF of 3. We're left with x minus 3. This is a positive 3. We're left with x minus 3. So x minus 3 is common to both. So we get x minus 3, and we're left with 5x plus 3 equals 0. We now have a factorized quadratic equal to 0, which we can easily solve. So we say either x minus 3 equals 0 or 5x plus 3 equal 0. Add 3 to both sides, so you get that x is equal to 3. Then we will minus 3 from both sides, and we'll get that 5x is equal to minus 3. Divide both sides by 5, so we get x is equal to minus 3 over 5. And there we have our two solutions. And this is how we solve quadratic equations. I have shown you quite a number of examples. Now you have to try some on your own. Key things to remember. To solve a quadratic equation, in the first place it must be an equation. You cannot solve a quadratic expression, so you have to check to make sure it is an equation. To solve a quadratic equation, it must be equal to 0. To solve a quadratic equation, you factorize the quadratic, and then you would put either one bracket equals 0, the next bracket equals 0, and then you would solve each one to come to two solutions for x. The only one that does not give you two solutions is a perfect square.